We organized this event to celebrate World Photonics Day and gather several scientists from all around the world to hear their valuable experiences and works related to photonics. I want to start the program right away since I can tell that everyone is eager for the next few moments and really excited to spend the entire day in the photonic world. Now, for the welcome speech, I invite IETE Photonics Society Turkey Chapter Chair, Associate Professor Dr. Hasan Göktaş.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to IZPHOTECH 2022. We will start with biophotonics and continue with solar cells and photonic integrated circuits. And we will see why the world is in transition process between microelectronic circuits and photonic integrated circuits. I hope you will learn a lot throughout this webinar, and I hope you will have great ideas after this webinar, and hope you will apply in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Göktaş. We look forward to hearing from you again tomorrow, and it's time to have a chance to learn about the details of your work. Now it is time to invite the advisor of IZTECH-OPS and Photonics Society and head of IZTECH Department of Photonics, Professor Dr. Canan Varlıklı.
Very much, Ekim, and dear all. As Ekim, our president of Student Council of IZTECH and the presenter of today's event has said, calls on Photonics Science and Technology at IZTECH is planned to celebrate the World Photonics Day with the contributions of İzmir Institute of Technology Photonics family. Our undergraduate and graduate students are the most important members of IZTECH-Photonics family, and IZTECH's Optics and Photonics and IEEE Photonics student chapters were established with their initiatives and became members of Optica, formerly OSA, and IEEE Photonics Society, respectively. I would like to thank our students and the named international organizations for their support. I also would like to use this opportunity to thank our rector, Professor Dr. Yusuf Baran, for his sincere efforts on our future, our students. He always finds time in his schedule whenever the students of IZTECH ask for it. I'm grateful to 11 valuable speakers from 9 countries who will share their valuable contributions to photonic science and technologies within the scope of IZPHOTECH 2022 for dedicating their most valuable assets, time, to us. I hope that these valuable speeches, which most of them will be streamed and archived on the official YouTube channel of IZTECH Optics and Photonics Society chapter, will contribute to many photonics enthusiasts. Thank you all.
Thanks a lot, dear Mrs. Varlıklı. I wish we could express our gratitude by words alone, but I'm afraid they will never be enough. We really appreciate your dedicated time and effort that went into making this event happen. Now, I invite the Rector of İzmir Institute of Technology, Professor Dr. Yusuf Baran.
Well, good morning, all. It's a real pleasure for me to be here. And I would like to start with my sincere thanks to the department chair and all the faculties and our students from Department of Photonics for organizing this valuable event and inviting me and giving me the chance to share my insights with you. Of course, Department of Photonics with the Bachelor of Science with our students is quite new. But when you look at the photonic studies in İzmir Institute of Technology, of course, we have much longer story in IZTECH. From many different departments, we have professors, we have faculties, laboratories working on different aspects of the photonics. And when you look at the current and the future of the world, you can understand that there are many, many different challenges that we need to face, many problems that we need to solve, because society expects from the universities, from the professors, from the faculties, and of course, from our young colleagues, from our students, they expect you to solve all the challenges and the problems that we are facing with. And very interestingly, we give, separations from the disciplines. We separated the disciplines, but actually, when you look at the inside of the disciplines, when you look at the science, there is no border among the sciences. No challenge or the problem in the current world can be solved by a single country, by a single university, or by a single discipline. We all together should come, work, dedicate, and then try to solve the problems and create a better and much better world for our next generations. And very interestingly and proudly, when you look at our Department of Photonics, you can see professors coming from different fields, from engineering, from basic sciences, from chemistry, from physics, from material science, because it's a multidisciplinary and even an antidisciplinary. I love to use this terminology as well. We are living in a world of antidisciplinary. There is no border among the disciplines. So, and we are also quite proud to be the first department of photonics with Bachelor of Science degree in Turkey. So our students will be the leader of this discipline, this scientific discipline in Turkey, because whatever you achieve, whatever goals you get, your followers, our next students will follow your steps. So you have an amazing role on your shoulders, and there is no chance for you apart from being successful. And as I said, it's an honor for us to have the first department of photonics in Turkey in our university, and in addition to our master and the PhD programs as well. And in very short time, we will revise our Department of Photonics with all the infrastructure and the laboratories and the offices and the classrooms. And more importantly, IZTECH will be one of the main headquarters for the photonic studies with the ongoing construction of very huge science faculty laboratory building. So there will be an amazing opportunity for you, the young ladies and the gentlemen, to work, to search, to find the solutions for our problems and find the solutions to the challenge as well. So once again, I would like to thank all the organizers, all the contributors to this event and inviting me. And I wish you all a very fruitful and enjoyable day and event. And I would love to thank all the speakers from the national and international area and for sharing their insights, their experiences, their know-how, and giving our students the chance to brainstorm for the current and the future problems and the challenges. So I wish you all an enjoyable and fruitful day and meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, dear Mr. Baran. It was an honor to have you in our event. We know your time is precious and we are immensely grateful you were able to carve out some time with us. Now ends the opening speeches. I would like to address you, our esteemed audience. I'm sure that the feeling your beautiful energy here will make our program much better. We hope to make it a memorable one and look forward to meeting and spending time with all of you in the near future. I wish you a beautiful day full of photonics. Now I'm giving the word to Associate Professor Dr. Hasan Göktaş to start the first session. Enjoy.
You first, and then we can start the webinar. And I can give you the screen. You can start present the PowerPoint. Professor Sheng-Lung is from National Taiwan University. Before joining the National Taiwan University, he served as chairman of the Institute of Electro-Optical Engineering, National San Yat-sen University from 2003 to 2005. His research is basically based on crystalline fiber-based devices and applications. He pioneered the development of cellular resolution of optical coherence tomography and has used it clinically in early stage diagnosis of cancers and diseases. Professor Sheng-Lung, you can start. It's all yours. Thank you so much.
Okay, so can you see my share screen?
Yes, we can see.
Okay.
And we can hear you. Everything is clear and nice.
Okay. Good morning. Thank you, Professor Hasan Göktaş. Yeah, and also thank you for organizing this program. I think I should also acknowledge the sponsorship from IZPHOTECH Photonics Society. Okay. So this talk is about OCT, which is an acronym of optical coherence tomography, and it was invented over 30 years ago. And right now, it is widely deployed in clinical settings, and it is still fast progressing. So I hope this talk can provide the audience with a glimpse of present status and the future trends and challenges. Okay. Okay. So this is the outline of my talk. I will first give a very brief overview about this OCT technology, and then I will show you our recent progress on cellular resolution OCT. Okay. Then I will give you my personal perspective about the trends, the challenges about the OCT. And finally, I will summarize my talk. Okay. Apparently, the concept of OCT is closely related to light coherence. Okay. So when two coherent waves are combined by adding their displacement in space and time, you will see constructive and destructive interference pattern as shown in the lower right corner. However, if the two waves originated from an incoherent source, you will see the so-called coherent spike only when they went through the same displacement. The envelope of the strong coherent signal provides the optical sectioning capabilities during image formation. Okay, so to implement the OCT or to use the OCT actually is quite simple. As shown here, you just have an incident light illuminate on the device or tissue on the test. Then you try to detect the backscatter light. Okay, when you try to detect the backscatter light, you try to use a very sensitive detection scheme. As shown on the right-hand side, you see kind of a microsecond interferometer. The only difference is that usually for a microsecond interferometer, people use a laser as the light source. But for OCT, people use an incoherent light as the light source. Okay, and this kind of detection scheme is quite similar to the homodie detection in optical communication. Okay, so you have the incident light, you have beam splitter. The light is split into the reference beam and the sample beam. Okay, then you try to combine them, so you have a detection beam, and using either point detector or can using CCD, CMOS sensors. Okay, so this is the basic configuration of an OCT. Okay, so as I just mentioned, for this kind of incoherent beam combining, okay, you will see when you try to scanning the reference beam, you will see the coherent spike. So on the lower left-hand side, you see a 1D trace, which is the envelope of the coherent spike. Okay, so on the sample arm, in case you have a one-dimensional lateral movement, so you can acquire a 2D imaging. So in this case, this is the human cornea. Okay, so in case you have a 2D scan on the lateral on the sample arm, or you have a 2D detection module, then you can have a 3D image acquisition. Okay, and for the resolution, the spatial resolution for the OCT, actually in the lateral direction is quite similar to a conventional microscope. So it depends on the numerical aperture of the lens you use to focus on the device on the test. However, on the depth direction, okay, as I just mentioned, for the incoherent beam combining, in the depth direction, actually the resolution depends on the light source, for example, the bandwidth. So in the upper right corner, you see the equation. So when your light source, you have a broader bandwidth, then you can have better sectioning effect. Or you have a shorter center wavelength, the lambda 0, you can have better resolution. Okay. And with the different wavelengths, actually depends on the tissue. For some tissue, for example, for our eyeball, people prefer to use a longer wavelength, so you can see the cornea, the retina, even the choroid layers. Okay. And as I mentioned, OCT was invented about 30 years ago. So you can imagine these days, there are many different schemes or configurations for OCT, because for OCT, basically, you need broadband light sources, you need an interferometer, you need the scanning mechanism. Okay, so as you can see from this table, so these days there are time domain OCT, the spectral domain OCT, spatial domain OCT, the full field OCT, the sweat source OCT, many different variants. Okay, so it depends on whether in the source arm, for example, you see in the source arm column, first of all, you need a broadband light sources. For the sweat source, if you have a sweat laser, so your wavelength is changing over time. So this is sweat source OCT. You'll be very fast. In the reference arm, you can moving the reference arm. Okay, then the time delay is changing over time. But for some scheme, for example, the spectral domain OCT, you have a fixed length reference arm. Okay. Also, for the sample or detection arm, you can use a mechanical scan, or you can use the two-dimensional, one-dimensional CMOS sensors, so speed up your data acquisition. Okay, so as you can see from this table, these days the full field OCT, because it uses a two-dimensional CMOS sensor, so it's very fast. Or for the sweat source OCT, there are many different laser schemes. You can sweep the laser wavelength very fast, so you can also have a very high speed image acquisition speed, reach I think 1 million light scans. So for OCT, it's a very fast image acquisition system. Okay, so over the past 30 years, so you can imagine right now OCT has been used across all different specialties in hospitals. For example, ophthalmology and cardiology, because right now worldwide there are more than 100 OCT companies. Okay, I think about 80% to 85% of those companies, they are working on the ophthalmology, so you can monitor the retina because these days there are many retina related diseases. For example, notably the age-related macular degeneration. There in the anterior segment, there are also many using this kind of non-invasive and fast imaging modality. So as you can see from the lower left corner, it's a typical gray label OCT imagings, because at our retina, usually there are 10 different layers. Okay, so because the high sectioning capability of OCT, so you can resolve all the 10 different layers in retina. And for cardiology, right now worldwide, I think about 5 to 10% of the OCT companies, they are working on cardiology. They use the so-called sweat source OCT. So after you place the stent in your coronary vessels, okay, you can check whether the stent is properly installed. Okay, and after you install the stent, sometimes the installment may not be properly installed. So people need to check whether whether the stent is properly installed. Yeah, and also for coronary vessels, people are not talking about disease detection. People are talking about risk assessment, because when there's a plaque on the inner wall of your coronary vessels, there's a high risk that those plaque may eruption, so it will cause severe diseases, yeah, heart-related diseases. Okay, so let's have a little bit about the literature survey. So OCT was invented by Professor James Fujimoto 30 years ago, roughly about 1990 or 1991. Okay, and it's on ophthalmology. And later on, people used this technology on cardiovascular applications. And in these early days detection on OCT, usually, typically, people care about the imaging speed, okay? Because for OCT, it's mainly used for patients. You have heartbeat, you have your breath, your blood flows. So the imaging modality got to be very fast, okay? But in recent years, the application of OCT start to penetrate into neurology, dermatology, and even gastroenterology and for endoscopy. For this kind of applications, people care about the resolution. They want to see the image more clear, which means that it's better. You can have a kind of cellular resolution, so you can detect or you can diagnose the disease or even cancers in the early stage. From literature survey, you can see that in all these areas, actually the number of publications actually because right now worldwide there are more than 100 OCT companies, even though most of them are just startups, but they do have many well-established big companies such as Zeiss. Okay, they also have OCT systems. So globally, last year the global market size already have reached $1.4 billion. And it's mainly on more than 50% of the market is on ophthalmology and some on cardiovascular applications. And you can see here for oncology and dermatology, okay, their market share is also catching up very fast. So typically, the average annual growth rate is pretty fast, more than 10% each year. Okay. And the market for OCT actually these days is mainly about the system, okay, but there do have some minor shares about the OCT light sources and the photonics modules, yeah, but the key is there on the system, yeah. Okay, and another very important development in recent years for OCT is that people try to adopt the artificial intelligence, okay. Because for artificial intelligence, okay, especially after year 2010, there's an algorithm called deep learning. Because for the kind of conventional artificial intelligence, people using the machine learning. So when the amount of data increase to a certain amount, then the performance will change only slightly. But using the deep learning algorithm, okay, even though the amount of data is huge, still you can keep on improving the deep learning performance. So this is a very good information, good news for OCT, right? Because one advantage of OCT is that this is a very high modality. So the data rate can reach even gigabyte per second. Okay, so you can imagine. For OCT tomograms, usually the data set is pretty big. So with the deep learning algorithm, you can really benefit its computation power to fully utilize this big data set. Okay, so you can imagine in the past 20 years, okay, so the AI on medical imaging has progressing very fast in a number of different medical areas, fields. Okay, and for OCT, as you can see here, if you try to using the artificial intelligence on OCT, for example, on the retina. So this is the data by DeepMind. This company is a UK-based company. It was acquired by Google a few years ago. As you can see here on the left-hand side in the table, the left column is the raw imaging. So for OCT, it's a kind of a black and white imaging, and the middle column is about the annotation, and the right column is the calculated segmentation. You can see that if you use the artificial intelligence on OCT, you can not only segment the biomedical tissues, also you can use to predict for disease prediction. Okay, so adding the reference here. So in case you are interested, you can check the reference. Okay, so you can imagine in the future, because of the high speed and the high resolution OCT, it could be very effective for early disease diagnosis. Okay, as you can see from the slide here, okay, the severity, the horizontal axis is the severity of diseases. Okay, usually for OCT, because we detect the structure. Okay, so when you have start to have some disease in the early stage, the structure information is changed kind of linearly over time, but the functional change is kind of stepwise, which means that when the disease in the very early stage, usually the human or the patient, you just cannot be aware. For example, for your eyesight, okay, even though your eyesight degrade over time, but usually when you start to feel that, well, your eyesight decrease, actually it's already not in the early stage. Okay, so because for OCT, you can have high speed and high resolution, especially with cellular resolution. You can see the cells, you can see whether the cell is a live cell or is under necrosis or apoptosis. You can also see the cellular interaction between cells. And in recent years, people using spectroscopy analysis, so you can get more information about the biological tissues. For example, the activation pathway and the system coordination. Okay, so if you combine the high resolution anatomical structure and the dynamical spectroscopy information, so it could be very effective for early disease diagnosis. Okay, and this is something very important because these days, okay, worldwide, the health expenditures are escalating very fast. From this slide, you can see use United States as an example. You can see that, okay, so the health expenditure almost reach 20, which is equivalent to 4 trillions. Okay, so this is an enormous number. So in case for the disease, you can diagnose this in the early stage. Usually the treating cost will be significantly reduced, especially for cancer. Okay, for an in situ cancer, it's very easy to treat. But in case for the cancer it start to metastasis, then it will be very difficult to treat the cancer. Okay, so for early disease diagnosis, it will be very helpful in the future for control the health expenditures, I think most of the countries worldwide. Okay, so this is a very brief introduction about the OCT. Now let me try to give you an idea about the cellular resolution OCT. Okay, so from this view graph, you can see some videos on the left-hand side. You see the M phase. You can see the video is about the surface of your skin. Okay, and for OCT, you can have a 3D imaging. It's very fast. You can see the on the lower right corner, you see it's a flow of red blood cells, and the optical power level is very low. So in this case, it's less than 3 milliwatt. I think many of you may have used the pointer, the red pointer. Usually for the red pointer, the power level is about 5 milliwatt. So for OCT, it's kind of very safe. It's a non-invasive and high-speed, high-resolution imaging modality. Okay, and apparently you can apply this OCT. In this case, is on an in vivo rabbit. So, okay, on the retina. So in the retina, actually, usually there are 3 different layers from the epithelial and to the stroma to the endothelium, okay? And there are many cellular structures. With OCT, with the 3D image modality, you can see all the cellular information. Actually, you can also see the nerves, okay? Because in near the stroma of cornea, there's a so-called subbasal nerve. Okay, so many diseases are related to the pattern of the these subbasal nerves. Okay, and also in this one is imaging of the cornea endothelium. These days, in many hospitals, when the patient, if you go to ophthalmology clinics, the physicians will try to imaging your endothelium, because for these cells, actually, after start from your birth, these endothelium cells will only decrease. Okay, so if you try to count down the density of this endothelium cell, okay, you want people, the physician can have an idea about the healthy of your eye. Okay, and as I just mentioned, you can also see the subbasal nerve, and you can analyze the density of this nerve. You can analyze the tortuosity and the length. It's all related to, there are many clinical evidence, okay, many diseases related to the information about these nerves. Okay, and as I mentioned, for OCT, you can see the cellular information, and because right now in hospital, the gold standard for many diseases is based on the hematoxylin and the eosin stain. From there, you can validate whether your imaging, you really can see the cellular information. So in this slide, you can see on the left-hand side, that's the HE stain imagings. On the right-hand side is the OCT black and white imagings. And the upper row is a very large area. It's almost 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter. On the lower row, you can see it's a very small area. It's only 300 micrometer by 300 micrometer. You can see the hair follicle, the fat cells. Okay, if you compare with the HE stain, then you can validate that your imaging to have a cellular resolution. Okay, and also, as I mentioned, because for this kind of optical technology, usually people worry about, well, how deep can this light source can penetrate into a human, either skin or your eye, and actually that really depends on the wavelength of your light sources. For example, on the left-hand side, if you use a visible light, then you can have very high resolution. Okay, but the penetration depth is only about 200 to 300 micrometer. But on the right-hand side, if you use a near infrared light, okay, and your penetration depth can go all the way to about 400 micron. And for skin diagnosis, actually, usually for the physicians, they care about the epidermis to dermis junction. Okay, and in our whole body, the average depth of the junction of epidermis and dermis junction is about 200 micron. Okay, for many of the skin diseases or skin-related diseases, it's originated from the dermal epidermal junction. Okay, so there's no problem for using OCT to see the junction. Okay, and the penetration depth apparently also depends on your skin types. Okay, in my laboratory, I have an Indian student, I have a Taiwanese student, I have a Spanish student. You can see that if you have a darker skin, then the penetration depth, it becomes shallower on the left-hand side. In the middle side, for yellow skin, then usually the penetration depth is about 300 to 350 micrometer. But for light skin, okay, you can penetrate deeper. Okay, the penetration depth actually depends on many issues. For example, how the amount of melanin beneath your skin, that's one issue, and also the scattering. Okay, because the human tissue is highly scattering the tissue. So depending on the scattering and the melanin, you limit the overall penetration depth. But for this kind of two-dimensional imaging, the acquisition time is very fast. These days, it can be even less than 1 second. It's kind of real time. Okay, so once you have this kind of cellular resolution imaging, you can apply either machine learning or apply deep learning, so you can segment the 3D information about nuclei, because for especially for cancer diagnosis, it's very important for the physicians to have the to have the information about nuclei, whether what's the size of the nuclei, what's the density of the nuclei, what's the boundary, whether it's a smooth boundary or it's a rock boundary. All this information related to whether the cell is a live cell, dead cell, or it's a cancer cell, or it's a normal cell. Okay, so with this kind of high resolution and high speed imaging, you really can have a 3D nuclei mapping. Okay, so that's give you an idea about the cellular resolution OCT. Now let me try to show you some of the studies we have made using this kind of high resolution imaging. Let me maybe start from the ex vivo and the in vitro study. This is one work I done about 3 years ago with our university hospital. So we try to do this at the mouse. This is a mouse SCC model. SCC stands for squamous cell carcinoma. It's also quite popular in our human. So we applied a chemical, the DMBA-TPA on mouse back skin. Okay, so we can try to induce the squamous cell carcinoma. So starting from a healthy mouse, then after about 1 to 2 weeks, then the skin become become a kind of dysplasia status. So we do the imaging again. Then after another 2 weeks, start to have the squamous cell carcinoma growth, the tumor. Okay, so with this animal model, so we can image the OCT at different stage, from the normal to dysplasia to SCC. And we also do the biopsy, so we can have a kind of the ground truth or the annotation using the hemotoxin and using stain. So with the ground truth, so you can do either machine learning or deep learning. And one important information we gain from this imaging is that high resolution is really very important, because in this slide you can see on the vertical axis it's about the accuracy on whether the OCT imaging, you can use it to discriminate whether the skin is a normal state or it's a dysplasia state or it's a cancer tumor. Okay, on the horizontal axis, it's about the downsampling. Okay, so without downsampling, it's a very high resolution. The spatial resolution is about 1 micrometer. So if you have a 2 downsampling rate, that means you reduce the resolution to 2 micrometer. Okay, so when you have a higher downsampling rate, that means you have an even worse resolution. So from this slide, you can see that. So for this kind of cancer diagnosis, the high resolution is something very important. So when you try to downsampling, which means you reduce the resolution, then the accuracy will drop kind of linearly. And another very important thing is that when people apply the artificial intelligence on medical imaging, in recent years, many people feel that have the experience that AI is something very effective to do many things in the biomedical fields. But the only problem is that the AI algorithm is something like a black box. Okay, it gives you the right result, but you have no idea why the AI algorithm can give you the right result. Okay, but on the cellular resolution OCT, actually we don't quite have this problem, because as you can see from this slide, the left column, especially for the upper row is the raw OCT imaging, the black and white. We have the normal state, we have the dysplasia state, and the squamous cell carcinoma. Okay, for the when using the deep learning algorithm, they can tell you the heat map. The heat map means that where is the location that's most helpful for the AI algorithm to determine where's the location they are focused on. Okay, so on the left-hand side, you see the HM1, HM2, HM3, HM4, which stands for the heat map for high resolution or for with a smaller pixel size. For HM4, that means it's a broader view of the heat map. Okay, so when the AI algorithm look into the detail for the HM1, those cellular, the bright, you see the bright spot in the second row, the HM1 row, those are the nuclei location. Okay, so you can see that those locations are highlighted. That means they are very important for the AI to make a decision. Okay, so deep into the structure with the larger, we call this a receptive field. You start to see the thermal epidermal junction and even the certain corneal layers. Okay, so which means that the reason why this algorithm can give you the correct result to discriminate whether it's normal, dysplasia, or SCC, actually, in a sense, is quite similar to the physicians. Because for physicians, when they look at the medical imaging, okay, for example, the thermoscope, they try to identify where is the thermal epidermal junction. They try to identify, they try to see what's the shape of the nuclei, okay? And that for the animal model, actually, is a very large data set. Actually, I try to place the data in a repository, which is called IDEA. So for those students, audience, in case you are interested in working on AI, you can download the data set from this IDEA repository. Okay. And in recent years, we also collaborate with many hospitals. In this case, we are collaborating with the Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center in New York with Drs. Menu Chen and Dr. Jason Chen. They are working for the dermatology surgery department. Okay, so on the upper left-hand corner, that's OCT imaging. This is in vivo, but you can see that actually the image size is very large. Okay, for this excisional tissue, the size can reach even 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter. Okay, because this is a clinical trial, so they also biopsy the sample, and on the lower left-hand corner, you see the stand imaging. Okay, that serves as the ground truth. Okay, so when compare with the OCT black and white, and look at the stand imagings, the physicians can get familiar with the OCT and to see where is the, for example, the cancer cell, where is the hair follicle, and where is the sebaceous gland, where is the mucin. Okay, so as you can see from this slide, so for this clinical trial, we have both the stand imaging. In this case, they use the toluene dye blue and the OCT. So the physicians, they try to segment, okay, annotate both the stand imaging and the OCT, as you can see from this slide. And right now we have quite a big data set from about 30 patients. Okay, even though 30 is not a big number, but as I mentioned, for each of this in this the imaging, actually the size is very large. This is 1 to 2 centimeter by 1 to 2 centimeter with cellular resolution. Okay. Okay, so this is the data set right now. Yeah, this is the 23 OCT imagings. So the physicians, they try to annotate those imagings. Okay. All right. So this is the our preliminary result. As you can see here on the left-hand side, this is in our test set. We have the input OCT imagings. In the center column is the annotation by the physicians, and on the right-hand side you see the AI output. Okay, so the different colors. The yellow means the true positive, and the pink is the false positive, and the blue is the false negative. Okay, so qualitatively speaking, you can see, well, it seems that the AI really learned something, though the result is not quite satisfactory. But because right now, as I mentioned, we only have about 23 imagings. So in the future, once we have a larger data set, okay, so we do expect the result can be better. So you can have a kind of a quantitative assessment, okay. So in terms of the BCC segmentation, right now we can have 60% for the IOU. The 60% is the intersection over union, okay. And for the skin cancer detection, actually pretty high. We can have for accuracy, it's almost 90%. It's 87.8% right now. And for sensitivity, it's more than 90%. For specificity, it's a little bit low. It's about 80%. Okay. That's for our ex vivo study. And you can imagine, you can also apply the OCT for in vitro studies. So this is a melanoma cell line. You know that melanoma is kind of a cancer cell, okay? And if you use a typical microscope to look at this cell, it's on the left-hand side. Well, you have limited information, but if you use OCT, you can see the cells at different depths. You can even see the microvilli on the boundary perimeter of the melanoma. Okay, so you can use this kind of 3D imagings as an image biomarker. Okay, for example, you can check, you can discriminate whether the cell is a melanocyte, which is a benign cell, or whether it's a melanoma, which is a malignant cell. Because for OCT, you can generate a lot of features. For example, the average signal, the standard deviation of the end phases, or the kurtosis of the end phase, or the intensity features, many features. Okay, so from our preliminary study, you can see it's many of these numerical features are quite effective. Okay, to discriminate whether it's a normal cell or it's a cancer cell. Okay, and you can also apply this kind of in vitro study for very complex cultivated cells. Okay, because so on the left-hand side, on the upper left corner, it's by the again the standard imaging. On the lower left corner, you see the OCT. Okay, because for the standard imaging, you can only have just one imaging, but for OCT, you can have a 3D imaging, so you can have much more information. Okay, to see the cell differentiation directions, and to see whether the cell is activated. Yeah, so a lot of information can be extracted from this 3D informations. Okay, and as to in vivo study, okay, because for OCT, as I mentioned, it's a very fast imaging modality. So apply on in vivo in a clinical setting is something very important. So in our laboratory, we have collaborated with our domestic company called Apollo Medical Optics. So they have FDA-approved system on the in vivo OCT. As you can see here, from the on the left-hand side, from the black and white imaging, you can see the dermal epidermal junction. You can see the stranded corneal layers. You can see the microcapillaries. You can see the small vessels, the sweat duct, the hair follicle, the melanin, many informations. But apparently, this kind of black and white imagings is typically not quite familiar to physicians. So you need a lot of training for the readers to really how to understand how to read this kind of black and white imagings. Okay, so we have a collaboration with our domestic hospital, which is called Mackay Hospitals. So the physicians, they are specialized on skin cancers. Okay, so you can see, so we try to build out a kind of a guideline, or so in the future, when the physician look at, when they see this kind of cellular resolution OCT, they can identify either diagnosis or segment the lesions. Okay, so in this side, on the left-hand side, you can see this is a basal cell carcinoma. This is something, this is skin cancer actually is very popular in United States, in Europe, or even in Australia. Each year, just in the United States, I think there are more than 3 million new instances for this basal cell carcinoma. Okay, and on the right-hand side is another kind of malignant tissues. It's the so-called EMPD. Okay, so we have the stain imagings, we have the clinical imagings, we have the thermoscopy imagings, and you can compare with OCT. Okay, and this is another information which is melasma. Okay, so from OCT, yeah, you can identify the melanocyte, the solar elastosis, and the melanophage. This kind of spatial or abnormal cells. Okay, and for dermatology, or people call this aesthetic medicine. In case you have some navy or kind of lesion induced optical breakdown. Okay, so in the past, this kind of result after laser therapy, you just simply cannot see what is the depth of this optical breakdown or what's the effect of laser therapy. So with this kind of very high resolution OCT, so you can immediately know what's the efficacy of this laser therapy. Okay, so we have collaboration with the Marquette Hospital. As you can see on the lower left corner, this is the booklet was edited by Dr. Yo-Hong Wu. He is a pathologist. Okay, so he tried in the Marquette Hospital. They try to scan many different kind of skin diseases. So for each of these diseases, we have the OCT imagings, we have the stain imagings, we have the clinical imagings, we have the thermoscope imagings. Okay, so for those of you who are interested in this booklet, you can email me. I can send you a copy of this atlas. Okay. Okay. Now let me show you my personal perspectives about the trends and the challenges about the future OCTs. Okay. Actually, right now there's a web called OCT News. Okay, it's run by Dr. Eric Swanson. So if you get on this link to this OCT News, you will see many the latest information about OCTs. Okay, so because of the OCT's high resolution, high speed, and high sensitivity, so you can imagine there are many different kinds of exciting new OCT applications. For example, as I just mentioned, the surgical guiding. Okay, and you can have a functional imaging. When I say functional imaging, I mean because OCT actually these days it's not just give you an imaging the structure. It can give you some dynamic information. Okay, it can also give you many spectroscopy information. Okay, because for example, in a human skin you have pigments. Okay, the pigment you can you will absorb light and give you, and for example for the melanocyte. Okay, it can help you to identify the location of the melanocyte and whether it's a normal skin or it's a malignant skin. Okay, and then the third one is the optical biopsy. Some people call this virtual biopsy because worldwide actually each year there are hundreds of millions of biopsy being conducted. Okay, but many of them actually after the biopsy, if the physician find that well actually it's not a malignant tissue, it's a benign. Okay, so in case for these kind of in vivo OCT, you can have a diagnosis on the have the check find that because the stain imaging right now is the kind of the gold standard for many diseases, but the stain imaging actually is a two-dimensional imaging, and even though tropic resolution. Okay, so actually it's possible to have more information than the HE stain. Okay, so in the future with the high resolution and high speed OCT, you really could advance the scientific and the clinical understanding about the human lesions. Okay, So this is an example. You can use the OCT during the intraoperative assessment of tumor margins. Okay, actually, this is something very important because during the assessment of tumor margins, where is the boundary of the tumor margin? So you can imagine right now worldwide, there are many different technologies that people are using, try to find out to precisely find out the tumor margins. So on the right-hand side, you see that some of the techniques is label-free, for example, OCT. Some of the technology you need a label, for example, the fluorescence kind of technology, okay, and some are kind of multi-modality. Okay, so among these technologies, OCT is kind of very close to the clinical, the hospital usage. Okay, so on this slide, you see that for the technology that's in the outer ring, that means it's more kind of in the laboratory or in a preclinic setting. But for the closer to the center, which is the hospital or clinical setting. Okay. And as I mentioned, actually, these days, OCT cannot just give you an anatomical information, the structure information, because the imaging of OCT is very fast. Okay, so as I mentioned, coherent spike. Usually for the typical OCT, people only use the envelope of the OCT signal, but actually beneath the OCT envelope, you have the carrier. The carrier carries broadband information, okay, and because it's very fast, okay, so you can analyze the dynamical information of the tissue on the test. You can also have a spectroscopy information. Okay. So for example, you have there's flowing, so you can find out what is the velocity of this blood cell, okay, and you can try to extract the vasculature of the blood vessels, okay, and also, and because for OCT, remember I mentioned there's a broadband spectroscopy information. So for example, for the hemoglobin, okay, so for the hemoglobin, when the molecule is attached to oxygen atoms or to the carbon dioxide, they have different absorption coefficient. Okay, so on the left-hand side, you see that for the red curve, which is the absorption for when the hemoglobin is attached to the carbon dioxide, you can see the absorption reduced significantly. Okay, so just using the OCT, actually you can find out whether the hemoglobin is attached to the oxygen or attached to the carbon dioxide. Okay, so this kind of the functional information. Okay, and regarding the spectroscopy information, this is a measurement of OCT on the liquid crystal display panel. Okay, so the red, blue, and the green. That's the pixels within on your notebook. You have the liquid display panels. Okay, so using OCT, you can have a non-destructive measurement. Okay, so because so from this analysis, actually you can find out the dispersion and the extinction of the color, the pigments of these color cells. Okay, apparently this spectroscopy information can be applied for the human, the biological tissues. So in this case, on the left-hand side, you see a human skin. Okay, so at different depths, okay, you can get the spectroscopy information. Okay, you can see here, you can acquire depth-dependent spectrum for the biological tissue. Okay. And another very important trend for the OCT is that because for OCT, you can have a 3D image construction, but how you construct the 3D, you can have different ways. As you can see on the left-hand side, okay, so for some of the OCT configuration, okay, you acquire the cross-sectional image first. When I say cross-sectional imaging, which means the YZ plane or the XZ plane, okay? For some of the OCT,
sorry for interruption. We are last 9 minutes.
I only have three more minutes.
Yeah, 9 minutes.
So for 9 minutes. Okay, good. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. So I will try to speed up. So for example, for the so-called frequency domain OCT, either the SD OCT or the source source OCT, they acquire the cross-sectional image first. Okay. But for the full field OCT, you acquire the in-fast first. So it depends on the tissue. So some of the tissue you prefer to have the cross-sectional image first. For some of the tissue you prefer to have the in-fast first. Okay. So in recent years, actually for the source source OCT has undergo a very fast development, because for this kind of source source OCT, the image speed is very fast, and it can allow deeper penetration, because as I mentioned, if you use a near infrared light source, then the typical penetration depth is deeper. And for the source source, because it's instantaneous line width is very narrow, so actually it's we call a coherent signal roll-off is slow. It also can help the deeper image scanning. Okay, so for this kind of source source OCT, so worldwide there are many groups they're working on the source source OCT for different wavelengths and for different wavelengths sweeping speeds, and there indeed do have some unmet need that people need this kind of cellular resolution source source. For example, for coronary vessel risk assessment. This is a paper published by a Harvard team. Okay, because right now for the assessment, the risk assessment of the vulnerable plaque within the coronary vessel is based on the thickness of the people call thin cap fibroaceroma, the thin cap thickness. Okay, but in recent years, people from the autopsy and the people realize that this may not be a very good standard to judge of the aceroma. Okay, and also after the stent implantation, also people need a very high resolution to see whether the stent is properly installed. Okay, and in terms of the laser to have a broadband sweeping range. Okay, because to have a cellular resolution in the near infrared, usually the scanning bandwidth you need about almost more than 100 nanometer, even to 200 nanometer. So there are some latest work on this kind of new light source development that can facilitate the realization of cellular resolution source source OCT. And in recent years, the silicon photonics is also something advancing very fast, because with the silicon photonics, you really can benefit in the future, benefit the foundry service, so you can mass production. So either for the 2D CMOS sensor, which is now widely used in your cellular phone, or for many of the waveguides, you can use the fiber, the coupler, the photo detector. You can integrate the array waveguide. You can integrate the main scanner. Okay, so for this type of silicon photonic devices and the modules, you can integrate into the OCT systems, so you can mass produce. You can have economic OCT systems, as you can see here. Okay, using the silicon photonics based OCT systems that has high potential to promote the OCT to wider regions. Okay. Okay, then finally, let me briefly introduce the virtual biopsy or the virtual histopathologies. Okay, because as I mentioned, because right now histo standard for a tumor boundary or a tumor diagnosis using OCT, you can have backscattering information down to a few tens of nanometers. So you can use this information to integrate with the artificial intelligence. Okay, so because as you can see here, right now for the cancer diagnosis on the left-hand side, the physicians use the HE stain imaging, but for the OCT, it's black and white. So even though you have a high still, it's very difficult for the physicians to read. Okay, so for the AI these days, people use there are many new algorithms being invented for image-to-image translation. For example, you can change the energy from the winter to summer, but for OCT, if you want to translate the black and white OCT into a colorful stain, the major difference is that because this is for a medical application, so need a very high resolution. You know, so for those kind of photo translation, it's kind of artwork. You don't need high resolution. Okay, so for OCT, you need a very high precision. Okay, so we try to add in the physician's labeling during this the translation. So as you can see here, okay, on the left hand side, the left column is the input black and white imaging. On the right column is converted HE stain imaging. As you can see, well, at least the thermal epidermal junction matches quite well. So because I'm running out of time, but the one issue for this kind of image-to-image translation is that usually, you know, physicians or clinicians, they are very busy. So it's very difficult to get a lot of annotations from physicians. So actually, you can use a kind of unsupervised learning. So do the image translation. So we also have some preliminary work using this kind of unsupervised translation. So we can have, you can see the result. You can convert the OCT on the left-hand side to the HE, or you can do the reverse conversion from the HE stain imaging. You can OCT, okay? And also, yeah, the accuracy actually is pretty good these days. Yeah. Okay, so I think I'm running out of time. So this is the kind of the take-home message for you. Okay. As I mentioned, the cellular resolution OCT can reveal the nuclei morphology in vivo real time. Okay, so you can link to the real world for future application in the clinical setting. And it's very important to apply artificial intelligence so you can facilitate the diagnosis or segmentation for the physicians. You can also apply the second photonics modules to empower the OCT technology. Okay, and for this work, I have many collaborators for the OCT light sources, for the AI, for the product, for many different the NTU Hospital, the Mackay Hospital, and for the Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. And for the prototyping, actually, I also benefit from a lot of from the ICT industry in Taiwan. As you can see from this slide, there are many companies in Taiwan, for example, from biomedical components, devices to hospital solutions. For example, the TSMC, which is for foundry services. We have a MediaTek for the circuit design. We have a Wistron, you know, for the prototyping or for system integration. They all benefit. I think for the Turkey audience, so in case you are interested using the Taiwan foundry service, I think you are also welcome to contact them. Thank you for your attention.
OCT is one of the hot topics and one of the very promising technology right now coming out to the medical industry. That's a great presentation, and hope maybe we can collaborate in future if there's any opening or chance. Thank you so much.
I want now to share my screen just to start my presentation. Okay, you can share your screen now, but before you start, I want to read your biography. Is it okay? Okay. Dr. Elias Stathatos is currently a professor in Electrical and Computer Engineering Department of University of Peloponnese. In period 2008 and 2010, he was department head of the Electrical Engineering Department in Technological Educational Institute of Patras. Professor Stathatos is the head of the Nanotechnology and Advanced Materials Laboratory, and he has more than 150 publications in peer-reviewed journals and 6 chapters in books which are recognized of more than 7,300 citations. He is co-principal investigator in 2,500 proposals, while he is a co-investigator in 5 patents related to solar energy conversion and solar cells. He has participated in more than 70 conferences, giving several plenary and invited lectures. He is a reviewer in numerous international journals, greater than 40, and an editorial board member for Journal of Advanced Oxidation Technologies, Materials Science for Semiconductor Processing, International Journal of Photoenergy, Nanotechnology, Molecules, and section editor in Chief Optoelectronics of Electronics Journal, MDPI. His research interests are focused in third-generation solar cells and their characterization. In particular, Professor Stathatos is interested in the conversion of solar into electrical energy using dye-sensitized, quantum dot, and perovskite solar cells employing nanostructured materials. Furthermore, Professor Stathatos is also interested to electrochromic nanocomposite materials for smart windows and luminescent solar concentrators for PV enhanced performance after spectral shift and greenhouse applications. His presentation is named All Printed Third Generation Solar Cells and Modules Made of Perovskites Under Ambient Conditions. The word is yours, Elias. You can start.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the nice introduction of mine. I can say my best regards to Professor Varlıklı. I can see from the camera. Hi, Canan. And let's go now. I think that I have uploaded already my presentation.
Okay, we are ready. You can start. Thank you.
Yes. Can you see it in good shape?
Yes, it's also
okay. Perfect. Okay, so the topic of my today's lecture is about all printed third generation solar cells and modules, basically made of perovskites and made under ambient conditions. It means that we don't use any inert atmosphere in glove boxes, expensive glove boxes. Everything has made under ambient conditions. But first, we need just to remember a little bit the history. All the things started at 1990 when there was the first presentation of dye-sensitized solar cells. It was a completely new technology where new materials were employed. Nothing had to do with silicon. We could make also transparent solar cells. And the only problem to that was the low efficiency. For the standards of solar cells, to have an efficiency around 12 as a maximum is a rather moderate efficiency for solar cells. When crystalline solar cells have an approximately efficiency around 25 in laboratory scale. Then we skip to change some dyes that cause the color of these solar cells with some semiconductors in very, very small size, quantum size, as we say. And then it was introduced the next generation of these solar cells, which was a quantum dot solar cells. Finally, nowadays, all the scientists working with a new technology that is called perovskite solar cells. It means that if you take a survey to the literature, we'll see that thousands of publications per year appear in any journals related to perovskite solar cells, which is a completely new material with very promising efficiencies, close to 25%. In practical, the perovskite solar cells have seen an unprecedented rise in the past 10 years. I mean that the first demonstration of perovskite solar cells was at 2009, I will explain more about this. And now we can say that after these years, almost 13 years, we have an efficiency that is close to 26%, which is a remarkable efficiency for this technology in a very short period of time. But first, what is a perovskite? Perovskite, in principle, I would say that started from a Russian chemist who discovered a mineral, a natural mineral of perovskite. But this material that is employed in solar cells, it's something different. It's organic, inorganic material and not pure inorganic material. The basic structure for perovskites is this one, A, B, and X3. It means that we have a cation, which can be a methylammonium or formamidinium or a mixture of them. We can add some metals like cesium of rubidium to be more stable. And this is the number A. The number B, it is usually lead. The most efficient perovskites are consisted of lead. Of course, there are some mixtures with tin in order to decrease a little bit the toxicity of the material, but I think the efficiencies are not so high. Finally, this structure is finished with some halides, can be chlorium of bromium of iodide or a mixture of them. This is the basic structure of a perovskite material is used in such kind of solar cells. The lead, it is in the middle of this crystalline material. It is very critical just to have a pure crystalline material, which is sometimes the most critical thing to get this high efficiency. As I said, the history started about perovskites at 2009. I would say this first appearance of perovskite was coming just as an alternative dye, I would say, for dye-sensitized solar cells. A Japanese group started with very low efficiency because they employed an electrolyte to these cells, which finally was not so good idea because this material have extremely different behavior if the humidity is increased. So this is the progress of this technology. So many inorganic materials as titanium dioxide or zinc oxide, and many configurations appear between the years. And we finally can say that nowadays we have almost 26% efficiency. Of course, there are some recent publications and some recent research on the construction of tandem cells, which means that it is used at the same time silicon photovoltaics and perovskites as bilayers. And finally, the efficiency can be increased over 30%. What now the basic architectures of this kind of solar cells? I have on the left the direct architecture and the inverted on the right, which means that we have these basic two structures here as it concerns the direct architecture. We have a conductive substrate like FTO. We have an electron transport layer here, which can be also be a mesoporous semiconductor like titanium dioxide. This is a nanostructure, a mesoporous structure of this. And then we have the perovskite, an hole transport layer on the top, and finally the cell is completed with the positive electrode, which is the top cathode, usually made by noble metals like gold or silver. Of course, this structure here can be with the name mesoscopic, We have also the planar architecture, which is like this one, but it does not appear this mesoporous layer of, let's say, titanium dioxide. This is the direct architecture. The opposite of this is the inverted structure. So we have now on the top the electron transport layer, and on the bottom we have the whole transport layer. It seems like the other, with the only difference that it is the inversion of the previous structure. But what is the current status now to the market? As it seems, after 13 years of development, there is mature technology about perovskite solar cells. So the main question here is, can we have a product? Is a product feasible to be? So the transferring, of course, the technology from the lab to the large area or to commercialize this one, of course, it is now mandatory. But on the other hand, we need just to find the way how to transfer this technology from the lab to the enterprise. As you can see here on the left, we have some of the efficiencies that obtained in the lab in a small area. You can see that they are pretty high. But when we transfer this technology from small size to the larger area, you can see that now we have a decrease to this efficiency. As soon as you increase the size of the device, of the module, of course, you can get even lower performance. What are now the challenges? Of course, when we transfer, as I said, this technology from small size to the larger size, we have some significant loss in terms of the overall efficiency. For nowadays, I think the possibility to reach a high efficiency on large area and stable devices is still limited. We need some more effort just to put this technology in order to have stable and very efficient solar cells, like in the case of crystalline silicon. Usually, we have a poor control when we try just to apply the perovskite material from the lab size, which is very, very small size, to, let's say, to a stripe of 20 centimeters. When we try just to think that 20 centimeters can be 1 meter, of course, this is a more difficult thing. I mean that the film morphology and finally how we can achieve a homogeneous and fine crystalline material in large area, I think that it still needs some good progress and some new ideas on this. Here the figure says that in the perovskite technology can put around here. I would say that we have the thin film technology and the multicrystalline or pure crystalline, monocrystalline silicon. I think this technology of perovskite can put it here because we have now some performance recorded in lab to be 26%, but on the other hand, we have an example of a prototype getting 17% for the efficiency in large area. And when I say 17%, I have in mind this case here of Panasonic device, which is 30 by 30. It is a module made with some printing techniques that I'm going to describe also today, where the efficiency is close to 17%, and this is a prototype already first established in 2020 or 2019, something there. So What now the challenge is again about the technology and the transferring technology from the lab to the enterprise. We have usually a poor stability for this kind of technology when we have some electrodes made of gold or some other metals. The basic reason is here that we have some ion migration between this kind of perovskite, let's say, with the metal. And finally, this is a cause from getting very low efficiency after some time of operation. So at these slides, I want to show you that we have the problem of ion migration. Also, we have the problem of gold itself. I mean that gold is noble metal. It is very expensive. So you cannot think that we can make devices or modules made with gold. You can see here the picture. We have spent a lot of gold in order to make some devices. If you think that you make panels of this, I think that the high cost is something that we have to take it seriously into account. What now are a perspective? I would say that some years ago we worked, but I think that after conversations with Professor Gretzer from Lausanne, the future in this technology is to replace the electrode of gold with carbon. The benefits that we have here, it is that we decrease the amount of silver and gold if we would like to make these devices with noble metals or copper. Of course, we eliminate the problems that we have with the metal back contacts. I remember I was talking about ion migrations. Of course, we have a reduction to the cost. And finally, something it's not obvious from a first glance is that we don't use any HTL materials without any organic whole transport layers, which is very important in the stability of these solar cells. So we can make with carbon electrodes some stable and cost-effective devices, which is very important if you want just to transfer this technology from the lab to the enterprise. This is an example here to see that this is a typical small device with gold, and this is a small module made with carbon electrodes. We'll see to the next of the slides that I have what is the stability of this, and of course, what is the performance nowadays using carbon. And when we are talking about cost, we need just to refer here what is the basic cost in a conventional perovskite solar cells compared to another with carbon electrode. As you may see here, the major cost coming from the conductive substrate, the HTL layer, and of course, the noble metal gold as cathode. The basic, I would say, percentage of high amount of this technology coming from these three separate materials and that we're using in the construction of these solar cells. On the other hand, in the case of carbon, I would say the only expensive material, it is the substrate, only the substrate. You can find a cheap glass substrate, conductive substrate, then I think that this technology can offer all the benefits just to be commercialized if, of course, you solve the problem of stability and a high performance. Of course, when we transfer from the technology from the conventional devices with gold to that with carbon, of course, the conductivity cannot be directly compared. That is the problem that we need just to sacrifice the performance in order to decrease the cost of this technology. Now, what is the basic device configurations prepared in our group and perhaps around the world? The first is the mesoporous structure and the other is the planar structure. For the first mesoporous structure, this is the basic components that we use. We have a substrate of FTO. We have a titanium dioxide as a blocking layer. This is the relative thickness of the films. We have also titanium dioxide mesoporous layer. Then we use also to that structure an insulating layer of zirconia, and then we put the carbon. The carbon is a mesoporous structure of carbon as a paste on the top. And then, as you can see here, with we can put the perovskite within the pores of the material, and finally with infiltration method, and finally we heat the substrate in order to crystallize the perovskite. So after we put the perovskite, we put it also to an oven just to crystallize, and we follow this annealing process. The temperature that we put the devices depends to the kind of perovskite that we use. The other structure here, which is more, I would say, attractive for a company, it is as follows. We have the substrate of FTO, we have a blocking layer, we have the perovskite layer, then we put a treatment with added solvent as it called. It means that we put a specific solvent in order to increase the crystallinity of the material. And finally, we anneal the perovskite in a relatively high temperature, around 80 or 100 degrees Celsius, in order to crystallize it. And finally, we put the carbon layer. The basic difference here between the two technologies is that in that case here we bake the carbon at 500 degrees, but in this technology here we can put the carbon on the top at a relatively lower temperature, around 100 degrees. So you can see that this technology can be also transferred in flexible substrates, which is very important also for organic electronics and generally to new applications of solar cells. Regarding the previous structure here, the mesoporous structure, usually if you put a perovskite like methyl ammonium lead iodide, this one here, we have some problems with the interlayers between carbon, oxide, and the perovskite. This coming from the fact that in the case of oxides and carbon, we have different behavior. In the case of oxides, it is a hydrophilic environment for the perovskite. On the other hand, the carbon is hydrophilic. It is not hydrophilic, so we have the problem of how we can put the perovskite into the pores there. That's why in that specific technology, we use an additive, which is an acid, aminovaleric acid iodide. It is now a composite perovskite with this material, which helps. This is here. This is the starting material of methyl ammonium lead iodide. And I suggest this solution because now we improve the interface between the perovskite and the carbon electrode. And finally, you can see we can get a different performance afterwards for the solar cell. Here is the case that we don't have this additive, and this is the case that we have this additive. So it means that it helps, it really helps because improves the interlayer, as interlayer between the carbon and perovskite to have a better interface between these two different materials, because perovskite, it is a hydrophilic material. That's why I said that it's a strong, I think, interaction with moisture, with humidity of the environment. That's why it is a really problem. In that case, with this additive, we can increase this interface between carbon and perovskite. In this technology, it's really stable technology, because also perovskite, it is protected to that structure here. It's not exposed directly to the atmosphere. And finally, we can get over 1,000 hours stability, of course, under dark. The efficiency that is recorded for this kind of technology is around 12 or 13%, which is pretty good for this technology, I would say, made with this specific way. Of course, the use of methylammonium lead iodide is not the only option. Of course, this is the case that we are talking about single cation. This is methylammonium lead iodide, or a mixture of some halides. There is also the case of double cation, which is a mixture actually of formamidinium iodide and methylammonium iodide, which is the structure is here. And finally, we have the triple cation with the presence of cesium, which generally, I would say, can be incorporated in crystal structure of perovskite. But in quadruple cation case, with the presence also of rubidium, is only just to protect the structure, and it is not incorporate into the structure of perovskite itself. So there are different cases of several options of perovskites. Of course, the efficiency is recorded is different, but finally, the basic aim of this is just to have a pretty stable device. That's why many publications and researches have been proposed in the past, based in many of perovskites, and of course a mixture of different things, as cations or halides. As it concerns now the characterization, you can see now this is a typical XRD pattern of perovskites. Either it is in a single phase or in quadruple, is more complicated structure of perovskites. You can see that it's almost similar with many peaks in XRDs. Anyway, we can recognize at the same time what is the case of perovskites we usually working with. Now, this is very important here, just to mention why everyone is working now with perovskites. As you can see, with the presence of perovskite, you can utilize all the visible spectrum, which is very important in the case of solar cells, because we can get all the visible light of solar light. So in that case, you can see that from UV till IR, we have a spectral sensitization in the whole area by the presence of perovskite. The difference here you can see is the presence of some metals like cesium or rubidium, which in the case that we have some metal doping, as I referred before, we have an increase in the absorptions in shorter wavelengths, which is very important also to utilize the solar cell close to the UV region. Finally, the band gap can be configured, of course, with diffuse reflectance measurements. And you can see here that the band gap of these materials are close to 1.5 or a little bit higher or a little bit less. So from the energy gap, we can realize that we can sensitize these solar cells in the whole region of visible light. Now I come back, what is the basic aim again? Of course, it's just to develop some solar cells and materials with usually with different architectures, if it's possible, just to be compatible, of course, with large-scale manufacture. Because afterwards, okay, the research is a good thing, but after we need just to make something for all the people, to make some new technology based on perovskites and to be cheaper than the previous of crystalline silicon, and finally with high efficiency. First one, before we go to the commercialization, the way that we can succeed it, is how we select the suitable architecture of perovskite solar cells. It's very important to choose between the architectures I referred before. Otherwise, we are going to be lost. So we need just to finalize which is the best architecture to use in order to transfer it in large area. As I said before, the basic structure is here. It is from literature with many publications, very high efficiency, based on perovskite, of course, with some organic materials like this whole transport layer, the inorganic material of titanium dioxide and some other, and of course, silver or gold as the final electrode on the top. Of course, as I said before, this is expensive materials. We have limited compatibility with industrial fabrication, as you may understand. And finally, we have very low or I would say moderate stability for this structure. That's why, as I said, we transferred the technology from this basic structure to that with carbon. This is a simplest structure that we can follow with an electron transport layer with a perovskite and the carbon electrode. As I said also before, the efficiency now for the current technology is 17%. We have very good stability. The cost of the materials cannot be compared with the previous structure here. And of course, the best thing here is that we have large compatibility with several industrial fabrication techniques. So, what is the basic structure that we can follow with carbon? With carbon, the first one is the first I said before. This is the mesostructure carbon-based HTM-free perovskite solar cells. As I said, we have titanium dioxide here, alumina here as a spacer and insulator, not to have short circuits here between the carbon and the electron transport layer. We put, to refer again that we bake the carbon at 550 degrees, which is really high for the needs of technology today, because the energy is very expensive, and to get ovens and bake the materials at 550 degrees perhaps is not a good option. After we put with infiltrated method the perovskite, we heat it a little bit just to crystallize it. I'm sorry, here. And we have a perovskite, of course. The next one is the embedment, as it's called, a carbon-based HTM-free perovskite solar cell. We have directly put the perovskite on the top of a mesoporous layer, and then the carbon. Finally, this is more attractive because the carbon now, the process is up to 100 degrees. So we have to think that we make here an energy saving to the stage of preparation. And finally, it is something which sounds to be attractive. Of course, we heat a little bit just to crystallize the perovskite, and this is the final device. But the most attractive structure here is finally the paintable carbon-based HTM-free perovskite solar cells. We have the separate layers of electron transport layer which can be very thin, of an electron transport layer like titanium dioxide or zinc oxide, and everything. Then we put a layer of perovskite material. We'll see to next slides how we can do it. And finally, on the top, we put the carbon layer. Again, this process is attractive for a company because it needs only 100 degrees just to make stable the carbon on the top. And this is finally the more suitable technology that could fit to the needs of a company. This is something I refer here, that we have tried both structures. I think that this paintable, it is the structure of our choice. We'll see why. The second aim to this technology, in order to be transferred in a company to make modules, is that all the procedures have to be under ambient conditions. It means that we don't need any special hoods or special glove boxes in order to make this procedure, because as you may see, this is very expensive, and I'm not sure if it is feasible to be transferred in enterprise to make the investment to make these solar cells. So we need just to make materials and procedures to be organized in such way to fit to the ambient air processing method of perovskite solar cells. When we are talking about ambient air processing perovskite solar cells, I think that we have to refer here, to be sincere, that this is not the same like the other is usually followed in a glove box. So it means that the humid environment may affect in several stages of perovskite solar cells, like the pre-fabrication stage, to the fabrication stage, and post-fabrication stage. So that's why we need to make some modifications for high humidity processed perovskite solar cells. It means that we need just to make modifications to the perovskite material and charge selective layers. Also, we need just to make modifications to the fabrication technique that we have to follow in order to finalize a perovskite solar cell. That's why we need just to put more effort and focus on the perovskite material itself. I mean that the deposition protocol, in order how we can preheat perhaps a substrate, or just to what we have to need to do with a perovskite precursor solution, or if we need, if we cannot apply the solvent engineering technique also to help the crystallization of perovskite, is something that we have to take it seriously into account before any new protocol of making perovskites. Of course, we need just to synthesize some advanced perovskite structures now to be not to be sensitive in the ambient processed methods. In order now just to make this, we have to develop a multi-cation or anion perovskites, and perhaps sometimes we need just to put some additives in order to make it more stable in ambient conditions. Now I'm going to present some achievements that we have made here, and I want to share with you. As I said, we started with both of these structures of mesoporous structure of perovskite solar cell, and of course this paintable structure, which is finally our choice. The important thing, as I said before, and I repeat it here, is that we don't have any HTM material. It means that there is no organic material in the space between the perovskite and the positive electrode. So it is very important because this is, of course, something that causes some problems after taking accelerating tests to see the stability of the devices. And finally, this is a cost effective because these materials are really very expensive. As I said, and I said again here, that with this structure we may achieve better compatibility with the large-scale manufacturing. We have better performance and stability in the solar cells. And finally, we can make some modifications which are easier than in the case that we follow the typical made with these organic materials, HTM and gold. Of course, we can use an alternative structure which is simplest for the companies. It is the planar, where we have removed this mesoporous titanium dioxide, and we use only a very thin layer of compact titanium dioxide. This planar structure, as I said, is more compatible with large-scale manufacture. You can imagine why. And of course, it is able to develop high performance, mirror-like, I would say, because the crystal quality of perovskite is better. If we think also to substitute the titanium dioxide that it needs just to bake in high temperature to make it a crystalline, we can use alternatively tin oxide. What is the basic benefit here? It is that we can make all the device completely under 100 degrees Celsius. It means that we can make flexible perovskite solar devices and modules. As I said, before we go now to the commercialization of this technology, the basic, I think, materials that makes a difference is the perovskite. So when we are talking about the fully ambient air processed carbon-based HTM-free perovskite solar cells, the perovskite has to be, the ink of perovskite has to be developed in order to be stable in that conditions. As I said before, a case of a mirror-like perovskite absorbent layer is something very critical because in this situation we have a better crystallinity, very good grains of perovskite, which is very, very important for the stability and the performance or the overall performance of this specific technology. This is a typical example here. We have a conventional perovskite made with perhaps spin coating, and you can see a lot of pinholes here, many gaps. Is not uniform in low magnification of perovskite. You can see in higher magnification also we have some pinholes and the quality of the perovskite is not so good. If you follow some advanced manufacturing methods and materials and also some deposition techniques, you can see on the other hand that we have a very good quality of perovskite, very homogeneous film, and the grains of perovskite are very, very smooth and very good. So it is very important when we develop in ambient air processed technology, perovskites in these conditions, is very important just to make the right inks of perovskite in order to be stable in under uncontrolled air processed methods. Some typical examples of the efficiency that we can obtain with spin coating, but with special inks developed for ambient conditions. I will refer only the last one, which is here. It is really very efficient device made completely under uncontrolled ambient conditions. One of the things that I have to refer here, it is that the low hysteresis that we have in such kind of devices. It is very important to have low hysteresis. This is below 10%, which is also very important for this technology developed under ambient conditions. I referred before about stability. So if you have this device, of course, we may understand we cannot expose in atmosphere for under real conditions of continuous illumination and humidity and so on, and to expect after all to have after 1 year a good performance. It is something impossible. That's why we need just to isolate this structure here from the environment, and the method that we usually follow is the following here. We have an encapsulation method just to make this device to be stable for all the tests that are needed to be passed before we go to the, commercialization. So as a first primary stage, it is to put a sealant and a plain glass on the top. It is a thermoplastic material that isolates this structure from the environment. But to be sure that this device would be stable after a long time, we have a secondary also sealing process, which is based in a UV curable resin. We illuminate it with UV light and to make it stable, very hard material at this stage here, to be sure that we have a complete isolation of the device from the environment. This is the common procedure that we follow to have stable devices, and of course to expose these materials now in standard tests that always are needed before we go to the commercialization. We notice some degradations basically at the first stage because the thermoplastic materials is developed in 150 degrees, which sometimes cause some problems with the crystallization of perovskite that we use it at 100 degrees. So for mesoscopic structure, we measured a 5% decrease to the overall efficiency, but for the planar, we measured approximately 15% decrease after this treatment. I would say that the problem, as I referred, basically is recognized to be from the first stage when we put the thermoplastic material. Of course, if you want to transfer this technology to commercialize it, you need just to pass some tests. This is some of the tests that we have exposed our devices. It is international accepted ISO standards. We perform several of them in order to be sure that everything is working properly after a period of time. As an example here for encapsulated device in small size, of course, it is this one. This is the remaining for at least 1,000 of hours at dark, under dark. You will see that the stability of the device is pretty good. Either the current or the open circuit voltage, the fill factor, and finally the conversion efficiency. Of course, we exposed in isothermal aging at 65%. We see some degradations, which is, I would say, almost, as I said before, around 15%, basically coming from the short circuit current and fill factor. On the other hand, we have an increase to the open circuit voltage. And finally, we obtain a lower energy conversion efficiency after 1000 of hours. Also, we have an isothermal aging at -20. We have some similar behavior here with the voltage and some small deviations from the initial performance here, approximately 10%. We have also performed some thermal shocks from room temperature to 65 and backwards. So we performed over 200 of cycles. The problem here is the current, but we have to measure it. So we have 40% decrease to the efficiency of the solar cells. And of course, we have the same behavior to the energy conversion efficiency. We have a hydrothermal aging from 65% to 65%, and at the same time, we have increased room temperature moisture to be appear. We obtain some results like this one, so we have pretty good stability. We have also a test with bias stressing with exposed in open circuit voltage. We have a decrease to the current after 500 of hours, and of course we have the same behavior with energy conversion efficiency. And this is the test that we perform according to the international accepted ISO's test. Now the scaling up. I'm not sure if I have time, but I want just to show some very interesting results here. I will take it very fast now to just to have a couple of minutes for questions if you like. So the disadvantage is just to transfer spin coat technique in a laboratory in an enterprise. Of course, is that we have very low throughput. We have very high material waste using spin coating, and of course we have limitations to the large area depositions. That's why some techniques that the industrial accepted is the plate coating, the slide die coating, the spray coating, and inkjet printing coating. This is also the technology that we followed. This is some performance now from the lab to some small modules. It is here the example of Panasonic module that I presented at the beginning of this lecture. And as I said, the inkjet printing technology is very attractive for a company because we may succeed the scalability, the fast deposition of the materials, the high accuracy, and of course, very important, we have very low material waste. Between the two technologies of inkjet printing, we followed this piezoelectric method, which means that from the printhead, we can see the drops coming out. Of course, there are two separate technologies in inkjet print technology based in piezoelectric printheads. We followed this drop-on-demand inkjet printing method to our printers. That's why we get very good and very high resolution, and finally, a very homogeneous film of perovskite. This is an example here how we can make perovskite modules in a lab or in a company. This is a printer that prints now the perovskite on the top of a planar titanium dioxide structure. You can see that the perovskite material is pretty homogeneous, and of course we get it a very good efficiency also after this method. Of course, when I was talking previously about the technology of inkjet printing and, of course, the planar structure of perovskite solar cells. This is.
We have 4 minutes only. Okay.
Sorry.
We have 4 minutes.
Yeah, yes, you have right. So I'm talking very fast now. This is the procedure that we follow just to make the devices, the modules. Everything is, as you may see, inkjet printed on the top. The only material that it is screen printed is the carbon, which is viscous. It is very attractive, but as I said before, the problem here with the printing is that you have to develop special inks for this method, because the common problem that we face here is this ring effect, coffee ring effect, which means that the crystallization of perovskite is better at the edges than in the middle of the material. That's why we need just to play with inks to make very, very good inks for this kind of deposition method. This is the coffee ring effect as referred before. The crystalline here, the phase is different than the other. So we have to be very careful about the material that we use and the method to apply on the substrate. This is some images to again for this to expose the problem of coffee ring effect. We have developed 1 centimeter square with inkjet print technique around 14%, which is very, very good and very high efficiency for this technology. And also we have very negligible hysteretic behavior for these devices. I want to skip a little bit now. Here I can show you, of course, that we have also a better stability for this device made with inkjet printing than the spin-coated method. And the most important thing here is just to show you that we have made also a module of perovskite 20 by 20 centimeters square. This is the module that you saw to the video before. The efficiency, it is very high for this technology made only under ambient conditions. If you want to see a survey to the literature, we see that in the case of this method that we follow with inkjet printing, we have perhaps one of the highest performances around the world. In the case that we have the materials without HTM, any organic materials. This is the module of perovskite materials that I said, without any organic materials. The stability also is very good. We are in a good progress just to make it as a prototype, of course, and finally as a product. And I think that this technology is pretty good and very promising as the next big thing in solar cell technology. Thank you very much for your kind attention. I don't know if you have any minutes for some questions. I would like just to answer. Thank you very much for your kind attention again.
Thank you. Serap Güneş. Serap Hocam, hoş geldiniz. Welcome. Before you start your presentation, I want to read your biography. Okay. Serap Güneş is the faculty member at Yıldız Technical University, Department of Physics. After completing her undergraduate and graduate studies at Yıldız Technical University, she continued her doctoral studies at Johannes Kepler University, Linz, Austria, between 2002 and 2006. She has been working as a full-time professor at Yıldız Technical University, Department of Physics, since 2014. She was awarded by the Turkish Physical Society in 2007 with Professor Dr. Şevket Erk, the Young Scientist Award for her work in the field of physics and energy. And in 2009, she won the UNESCO L'Oreal Support for Women in Science Award for her project work. Also given by the Turkish Physical Society in 2017, Professor Dr. Serap Güneş won the Professor Dr. Engin Arık Scientist Award. In 2022, she was awarded by the Ministry of Energy of Turkey with Women Energizing Turkey Prize. She is inventor and or applicant in 2 registered national and 2 international patents. There are 4 patent applications under evaluation. She worked as an executive in many R&D projects funded by TÜBİTAK. In 2022, she was entitled to be supported within the scope of TÜBİTAK BİDEP 2247A National Leading Researchers Program. She has published many scientific papers in high-ranking SCI/SCI expanded journals, for which she received more than 8,000 citations. Her presentation is named Recent Developments in Emerging PV Technologies. The word is yours.
Thank you very much for the introduction. And I would like to thank, first of all, let me share my screen and then I think you can see it.
Okay, we can see.
Okay, I'll make it bigger.
Yes,
well, I would like to thank Canan Hocam and Hasan Hocam for their invitations. And I really like to be here a lot. Thank you very much for considering me as a speaker. Thank you. And the title of my talk today is the recent developments in emerging PV technologies. And I'll start with this. If you type search engines top 10 problems of the world, and the number 1 is this climate change, which in turn actually affects many things such as water, energy, and many, many crises. So you may now ask me, you may now ask me, why are you trying to ask these questions as a scientist working in the field of energy? Is global warming real or not? But there are still people asking this question, how do we know that global warming is real? Nature will find a way and so on. But actually the idea is not new. It goes back to 1800s. And it was actually the Fourier's study. They were trying to understand this greenhouse. They were working on greenhouses that time in UK, and that time the glass was cheap, and they were trying to build a greenhouse from this glass. And he was trying to understand why the average temperature of Earth is 15 Celsius degrees. And then there were also other scientists following him. So I can say that the idea is not new. And how do we know? These are the graphs from the scientific papers. The carbon dioxide emissions are rising, Earth's temperature is rising. So there is a correlation of increasing global temperature with increasing atmospheric carbon dioxide. So ocean temperatures are rising. There are many, many results that we could say, yes, the global warming is real and its consequences are really serious. So we have a problem. And the problem is defined as the global warming and the climate change. And really the effects of climate change will be very, very serious if we are not cautious enough. So if we look at, it is chicken out of egg or egg out of chicken. It is something like this. So the energy and climate change are closely related because most of our energy needs are from fossil fuels. And the fossil fuels are the main reason actually behind the climate change. But the climate change also tells us that we have to pay attention on the style of getting energy from the sources. So if we look at the European Sustainable Development Goals, there are 2 important issues here. First of all, affordable and clean energy. And the second is this climate action. We have to do something on that before it is too late. But what if we add the human being in the figure? These figures are fine. We know there is the global warming, climate change is serious, global warming. But if we add the human being in the figure, what will happen? So the role of human being in this figure is really serious, because what do we want to do? We want to stay alive and survive, infinitely survive. We don't want to die. Yes, that is fine. but we don't only want to survive, but live with all the comfort and the luxury of the life, which requires energy actually that is highly dependent on fossil fuels. And we have two sources, the conventional ones that we already use and the renewable ones. So this is conventional versus the renewable. And we know that the fossil fuels are on the verge of depletion, and it is causing global warming and climate change, and we are really at a critical threshold. So we have to, and there is no alternative actually, that we have to pass to these renewable and clean energy systems. And what is the solution? Of course, we are not looking for a solution like on the right side, it's false, but let's have a look to this solution now, and I'll be focusing in the solar energy part in this talk. Why solar energy? For many years, people actually dig down to find a kind of source of energy, but if we just look it up, we'll see that solar energy is there. It's clean, abundant, and for free. And it's also very peaceful. People don't fight because of this sun. And from Turkey, and as in Turkey, we are very lucky from this solar energy point of view. So how can we evaluate this solar energy from sunlight to electricity? There is a wonderful device, which is a solar cell. And we know that the solar energy can be converted into electricity using solar cells. This is a chart showing the generations of solar cells. Actually, there are 3 generations, and these are categorized as generations depending on the materials used in the device configuration. In the first generation, the silicon is used, and in the second generation, it's also called thin film technology. Cadmium tellurides, cadmium sulfurides, CIGS are used. And in the third generation, here on the right side, which I will focus on that part today, we have the organic photovoltaics, dye-sensitized solar cells, perovskite solar cells, quantum dot solar cells, hybrid solar cells. There are many different kinds of device configurations. And these generations, they are divided into these generations. It is not because one generation is much better than the other one, or the latest generation is much better than the other ones. Actually, it is because of the materials used in the device configuration. So we can say that the future of the solar is bright, but with which technology? This is an NRL chart from National Renewable Energy Laboratories. And each time, as we are the scientists working in the field of solar cells, so we just check this list to see the certified efficiencies and best research cell efficiencies. And here the emerging PV technologies fall in this part. This is this red part. And people always trying to compare. Whenever I join the conferences, they try to put me in a kind of competition between these technologies, but I always emphasize this. There is no need for a direct competition because each technology has its advantages and disadvantages and may be used together. And with the help of these emerging PV technologies, today we are talking about disposable and wearable technologies. Now let's have a look at these figures. Conventional versus the third generation or this emerging PV. We have this solar plant here. We are familiar with this. These are silicon solar cells. And we know that conventionally solar cells were made up of inorganic materials such as silicon here. And here we have a new technology, flexible and wearable. This is quite new for us. We were not familiar with these technologies, but with the help of this polymer technology, conducting polymer technology, we are now able to go for these technologies. So can you imagine, this is a jacket, you wear it, you walk and charge your mobile phone, for example, or you walk and you do, for electricity needs, you can use this technology. You're walking and you're doing this job. So it's quite comfortable. And for the human being who want to live in luxury and who doesn't want to sacrifice from his luxury. So that is quite a good technology. Another question is this: will turning our faces to our old friend sun be a solution? And the answer comes from the studies that yes, it can be. There are two technology roadmaps which show that PV systems generating up to 16% of the world's electricity by 2050 is expected. And if you can support them by providing an additional 11%, combinations of these solar technologies will help us to do this. If we look at these third generation PV technologies, there are the crystal solar cells, polymer solar cells, dye-sensitized solar cells, perovskite solar cells, and Professor Stathatos already gave a very good lecture on that, so that made me happy. There are some overlapping points, and he's talked more on this industrial scale, and I'll be talking about the laboratory scale, so somehow this will be correlated with each other. If I look at the milestones in the history of this organic solar cell story, I think the first is this discovery of the conducting polymers by Alan Higger, Ellen McDiarmid, and Hideki Shirakawa. By the discovery of metallic conductivity in iodine-doped polyacetylene, they got the Nobel Prize in chemistry in 2000. And another thing for this solar cell issue, I'm really proud of being his student. Professor Sarıçıpçı was the one who published this work together with Alan Higger, and they actually discovered the photo-induced charge transfer from a conjugated polymer to a fullerene. So we have an electron donating material and an electron accepting material, and there is a charge transfer between these two. This is very good for the working principle of the solar cells. And why organic semiconductors? When I was a student, when I was looking at this figure, and as a physicist, I learned to respect to the chemist colleagues. Why? Because when you look at these chemical formula, the chemical figures, they all look similar to me. There are some chains, there are some groups, and you bring them together. So what? I was thinking like this. They look all similar, but by these changes, by small changes, or by some tailoring, chemically tailoring, you can have different kinds of materials which are absorbing and emitting at this wavelength scale. So that means you can tailor the properties of these organic semiconductors. And all these materials, although they are looking similar to the physicists, you see they have different absorption and emission profiles here. So whenever you go to the as physicists, for example, this is my style. Whenever I have a new material in mind, of course, sometimes it could be problematic because it is not synthesizable at all. My chemist colleague has a lot of tolerate on me, and I just tell her if this is possible. If it is possible, then we go for it. So you can go to the lab and tailor these materials, and you can have materials with different kinds of emission and absorption profiles. My supervisor calls these polymer inks. As you can see here, there are different kinds of colors here. And if I say you they are all semiconducting polymers, maybe it will be surprising to you. And especially the people working in inorganic semiconductor, it's really difficult to accept this paradigm shift from these inorganic semiconductors to organic semiconductors. But this is true. And all these solutions give us the probability of coating them and this wet processability possibilities. And why organic photovoltaics? There are several advantages of the organic photovoltaics. First of all, since these wet processing techniques are available, then we can process them easily over large areas, spin coating, ductile blading, evaporation through a mask, and printing techniques. They are low cost, low weight. They have the mechanical flexibility. It is possible. We have also seen it in the previous talk. They can be fabricated on flexible substrates, and this can provide transparency. And also, you can arrange the absorption profiles of the materials so that you can have different colors of organic solar cells. And band gap of organic materials can be easily tuned chemically by incorporation of different functional groups. Another thing is this, these are used, for example, this is an example of smart packaging. You will go to the market and this package will tell you that, oh, I have expired, don't buy me. And this will be powered by this solar panel here. and there will be a polymer display maybe, or it will not talk, but maybe it will show you that by the help of this polymer display. But this will be powered by this solar panel. At the beginning, it looks like a dream, but it will be real. The most important part here is this: the price of the smart packaging or this package shouldn't be higher than the traditional package that are being used. So I think by the development of these organic solar cell technologies, this will happen and this will come. So disposable solar powered products become a reality. Flexible and comfortable PVs are now possible. A large area flexible solar cells, as you can see here. You can make solar tents, solar cells, portable solar power modules, and these are possible. Let's have a look to the device geometries of the organic solar cells. The first organic solar cells were actually single layer devices. Between two metal electrodes, the organic material was sandwiched. This might be a small molecule or a polymer. It can be anything. Later on, of course, this had some kind of problems, but since the audience are coming from different fields, I didn't want to put a lot of effort to explain it and to go into the details of the physics, but all the jobs of absorption and transport and the other properties were being displayed by only this organic small molecule here, and the device efficiency was really poor. So what they have done is this: they discovered this bilayer heterojunction device structure, device geometry, on which this can be a plastic foil, it can be a glass. It is an ITO covered glass. ITO indium tin oxide, it has a metallic conductivity and it's transparent, because for this solar cell to work, you have to let the light go in, and ITO is a very good material for this. And we have a PDOT layer on top of it. This is a kind of thin polymeric layer. It is used as a whole transport layer. And on top of the PDOT PSS layers, we have the electron donating material and electron accepting material and the metal electrode, and the device is completed. These are the first examples of bilayer organic photovoltaics. Qingtang was the first one. It is called this Tang cell. And they had the ITO and zinc phthalocyanine and perlin dyes as whole and electron transport layers respectively. That time, these perlin dyes and zinc phthalocyanins were not soluble, so they were using this vacuum deposition techniques to coat these films on top of the ITO substrates. But now, fortunately, thanks to our chemist colleagues, by functionalization of these zinc phthalocyanines and perlin dyes, it is now possible, especially, it is now possible to make them through the wet processing techniques. And Dieter Meissner also, he was a collaborator of me in the previous times. I learned a lot from him. In their study, they used mixed layers of zinc phthalocyanine with C60, and the efficiencies were really significantly improved. But bilayer solar cells had some specific problems also, because you let the light in and then it travels, and then the excitons which can reach to this region could be separated, and you lose most of the current as a result of recombination. In this is one of the limitations. So excitons must be separated, and we need a kind of electron transfer from the electron donating metal to the material to the electron accepting material, or a whole transfer to a donor. So the problem here was the loss due to the recombination, and not all the excitons are dissociated. So what is the solution? We have here the bulk heterojunction concept. Instead of coating each individual layers on top of each other, they mix up this donor and the acceptor solution in the same solvent, the donor and the acceptor in the same solvent, and they make a kind of composite films. The idea was to distribute the heterojunction to the bulk of the film. Therefore, it's called this bulk heterojunction organic solar cell. And this is a picture which I took from my colleague Harald Hoppe. He was trying to show that the polymers, the opposite of the well-known theory, that they are not like spaghettis, but they are like wools, and these are the fullerenes. So the charges are transported to the appropriate electrodes through the fullerenes, electrons through the fullerenes, and holes through the polymers. This is the production scheme. We have the glass or the PET substrate. It depends on the flexibility you require. If you do not want a flexible substrate, then you can use glass. And then ITO is covered. Part of the ITO is etched, and on top of it, we have the PDOT layer. And we have the active layer in which electron donating and electron accepting materials are blended together. And we have a spacer here and aluminum as an electrode. These pictures I took from the Leo's labs where I have been during my PhD. So this is the preparation ITO. We need clean substrate. So preparation and ITO cleaning is the part of this production scheme, and then coating of this whole conducting layer, PDOT PSS, coating of the active layer, evaporation of the top contact, and we need a kind of sealing. I'll be explaining this in detail, and then we take this device for testing. At least this is for the laboratory scale. If we look at the most popular techniques for the lab scale, we have two techniques of spin coating and Dr. blading. What is this? We have a substrate, and by programming it through the spin coater, we can let it run and it rotates. And depending on the concentration of your solution and the rotating speed, you can have thick or thin films. This is a nice method. It is a quite uniform film, but the problem is you lose a lot of material. As you can see, it spreads here, and this material is lost. On the other hand, we have the Dr. blade technique in which we can apply to large area samples as compared to this one. This is most probably 1.5 to 1.5 centimeter sample, but here the area is a little bit larger. And you just drop the solvent here, as you can see, and this plate runs through this system with the help of an engine, and then you have a uniform film also. It is more advantageous because it has no material loss. Then actually this interpenetrating network and this nanomorphology term appeared. What does this mean? You have two different kinds of materials with different kinds of solubilities in the system. I'll be actually going into details of this in the following slides, but let's keep that nanomorphology term in our mind. And the other issue is this material issue. Professor Stathatos in the previous talk stated that this perovskite, we are lucky because it absorbs all the visible spectrum. And here, the absorption profile of our materials should match with the, or let's say, we want it to match with the solar spectrum, solar emission spectrum. So for this, the flexibility in chemical tailoring is necessary for the matching of the absorption of the PV material to the solar emission spectrum. This is the message. And if you look at the milestones in organic photovoltaics, and most of my colleagues actually asked me that for years you are working in this field, what is your motivation? So the motivation is this. I'll try to explain it now. When the first story started with the organic photovoltaics, they were using the same receipts, that is prescriptions. This is what people like actually. They like protocols and following protocols because that's safer, easier. You don't need to worry yourself. You don't need to bother yourself for that. And they were using PPV and PCBM as electron accepting and electron donating materials. And they were mixing them up or blending them in toluene as a solvent, and they were casting the active layer on top of this PDOT PSS layer. Later on, people realized that instead of using this toluene, what happens if we use chlorobenzene? Because as physicists, when we look from outside, they're all clear solvents, and for me, it is very difficult to distinguish which one is which. And yeah, so what is the difference? Why should we use toluene? Why there is a protocol like this? And they changed the solvent from toluene to chlorobenzene. Wow, suddenly there was almost 2-fold increase in the efficiency. So how this was happening, and they were trying to understand what is the reason behind. So by this small effect in a short time, and these surprises, of course, and that time when I visited Linz, this was about 2002, 2004, the years was like this, and I was assigned by my PhD supervisor to be the master user of atomic force microscopy system, AFM, because Harald was graduating that time. And people were bringing samples to me, but I was so used to the fact that chlorobenzene is the best solvent. I was thinking that I was the new one at that field, so I really I'm doing something wrong with the AFM images. There is something wrong. I was thinking like this. But of course, we realized that each polymer, or whenever you start with a new material, you have to start from scratch, and you have to always do these optimization steps for each material from the beginning. So for PPV and PCBM system, chlorobenzene might be the best solvent, but for different kinds of systems with different kinds of polymers and fullerenes, or maybe non-fullerenes, there can be another solvent appropriate. The reason behind these two different morphological images was this: you have two different kinds of materials, but they have two different kinds of solubility in the same solvent. So therefore, there was this phase separation. Of course, by just looking at the AFM picture and saying that there's phase separation is not correct, but of course, this work was also supported by SEM-TEM studies. I'm just telling you the conclusion. So this was one of the studies which has been almost a milestone. Everybody started realizing this word, this nanomorphology, morphology, and so on. Later on, Franz Peidinger, he was also from our group, he was studying P3HD PCBM. So this is something, this was polyphenylene, vinylene, and now this is thiophene. He built up solar cells using P3HD, poly-3-acyl thiophene, and PCBM. And there, whenever they put it on a kind of hot plate after fabricating device, he measures the efficiency and then puts it on a hot plate and applies a certain thermal annealing. And as a result of this thermal annealing, he realizes that the efficiencies increase. And this was then, here it was 2.5, and by replacing the material and also applying this post-production treatment terminology now appeared in our lives. So the efficiency was improved to 3.5%. Later on, by Heger's group, by putting some kinds of optical spacers in the inverted geometry, they also got 5% efficiency. And by years, by using non-fullerene materials and also low band gap polymers instead of P3HDs, which is more suitable for the photon harvesting purposes, were used. And then the fullerene derivatives were replaced by different kinds of non-fullerene derivatives, and the efficiencies reached up to 18%. What are the critical parameters to achieve high efficiency? So the efficiency is directly proportional to these parameters, and we know how to improve this. So as a result, short circuit current density, open circuit voltage, and the field factor are the important parameters to improve the device performance. And as you can see, improvement of the transport properties, mobility, for example, the photon harvesting by using low band gap polymers absorbing above 600 nanometer, or the optimization of the donor acceptor energy levels can improve the device performance. What are the other requirements? There are three important parameters. This is not only valid for organic photovoltaics, but for all photovoltaic technologies, this third generation, the lifetime, efficiency, and cost. If you have a very efficient device, but if it is dying, let's say, in 10 seconds, then this doesn't make sense. If you have a very efficient and highly stable device, but if it costs 100,000 euros, then this also doesn't make sense. So we have to always find a way to have these most important parameters somehow balanced. For the efficiency issues, this is one of the works from my group. Mehmet Kazici was my PhD student, and at that time, organic solar cells, in the organic solar cells, there were many electron donating, that means p-type materials, but electron accepting materials was limited. So our scientific question was, is it possible to design an N-type material with optimum properties? Actually, Mehmet was doing the theoretical measurements, and Çiğdem Yürür-Göreci was the one who synthesized these materials for us. And we really achieved high open circuit voltages. About the cost issues, Fatih was a postdoc in my group, and he was trying to understand what really adds up to the costs. And he realized that, I mean, we were aware, but let's say how severe it was. The vacuum deposition actually adds up to the costs, and he was trying to understand if it is possible to avoid this vacuum deposition, and he painted these electrodes here, and he concluded that we published this in a paper, and he concluded that it is possible to do this, and we had here comparable efficiencies for the vacuum deposited and printed cells. Another cost issue, and today I was happy, Professor Stathatos was also talking about this carbon nanotubes, and Abid Ali actually joined to my group as a PhD student, a short-term PhD student by the support of the TÜBİTAK BİDEP program, and he was trying to combine his studies together with ours, and he brought us some kind of multi-wall carbon nanotubes, as you can see here, and he tried to use these as electrodes. And we published this, and as you can see, we made these devices on flexible substrates, and our referee actually asked us to bend these devices, and with and without bending, he wanted to see the efficiency differences. We really had comparable efficiencies with the vacuum deposited silver electrodes. What about the stability? Stability is important because these organic materials are very sensitive to oxygen and humidity. And although you get high efficiencies, the stability is still an issue, because if you do not encapsulate it, or if you do not do something to prevent, if you do not create a kind of barrier for the oxygen and humidity, then these organic materials for sure will degrade. And encapsulation is an issue, or to invert the device structure, because in the normal geometry, we use aluminum as electrode, and in this, what is the difference between this inverted and the normal geometry is just the direction of the transport of holes and electrons, nothing else. So here, if we invert the device structure, then this will enable us to use silver or gold electrodes. And we also did a study and published in this journal of vacuum, and we have shown that the stability was really improved as we invert the device geometry. For the successful commercialization, we need the minimum system cost, maximum initial performance, minimum loss of the performance over time, and the efforts are focused on increasing the efficiency, lifetime, and the reduction of the costs. So we have the dye-sensitized solar cells. Till now, I have been explaining the organic solar cell part. Dye-sensitized solar cell, they are also in a group of this third generation solar cells. We have a titanium dioxide layer, but this system has an electrolyte, so it's a kind of photoelectrochemical cell. But thanks to this configuration, because now perovskite solar cells are also imitating this solid state dye-sensitized solar cells, except they replace the dyes with the perovskites. It is low cost, and we can utilize the visible range of the light, and it is simple manufacturing process, environmentally compatible, and the efficiencies were really high that times. So 10% was something that time. The problem there was the electrolyte. So the electrolyte, if it leaks or if it evaporates, this was a problem from commercial points of view. So people were trying, or researchers were trying to focus on replacing this electrolyte with a solid state hole conducting polymer or hole conducting material. So this group also did, this is Professor Gretz's group, who also invented the dye-sensitized solar cells together with Brian O'Regan. So to add up to this dye-sensitized solar cell, Abid Ali, this is also a work from our group. Also, he was again dealing with these cost issues. he was using platinum electrode to fabricate the dye-sensitized solar cells. And that time he joined my group, and we somehow were using a lot of this PDOT PSS, and he modified his multi-wall carbon nanotubes together with PDOT PSS, and this was a dye-sensitized solar cell. And this has been the cover page of nanotechnology. Sorry. And we really achieved high efficiencies. It was almost 4%. It was comparable to the ones which we used platinum as electrodes also. So the perovskites. There has been a very nice talk previously, so I won't spend so much time on that. But we have seen the perovskite structures, organic, inorganic perovskites. They are the actual rising stars of the third generation technology, because its efficiency improved so fast from 2009 to 2020. The efficiencies were about 3.8, and now we are talking about efficiencies of 25, almost 26. So the device structure, of course, Professor previously spoke about the large-scale fabrication. Here I'm talking about a little bit more laboratory scale fabrication. The perovskite solar cells, there are three device structures: NIP, PIN, and mesoporous structure. Here the difference is the change of the electron and hole transport layer. In this case, you use aluminum as an electrode. Here you use gold as an electrode. Again, if you look at the milestones in 2009, people were trying to imitate the dye-sensitized solar cells by replacing the dye with the perovskite layer. Later on, we had the solid-state perovskite-based solar cells here, and the efficiencies was, as you can see, 3.8. Now, the efficiencies are almost 25.8, and this is a single junction cell. But the most important part of this perovskite technology is that it can be also stacked together with the silicon solar cells, and you can have tandem structures. Of course, I'm talking about the milestones here, but these milestones also in the previous slides, milestones are regarding the power conversion efficiencies. And if you look at the scientific milestones, what has been done and what has been achieved, these are the ways the materials changed, the compositional engineering has been made, and still the long-term stability is a major concern for this technology. So why it is so still exciting to work in this field, and why people are so ambitious to work in this field? Because if you look at this, we have a lot of room to go, and we are very flexible on choosing these A, B, and X3. So by paying attention on these tolerance factors, you can have different kinds of perovskite structures, choosing one from each group. And if we look at the progress of the perovskite solar cells year by year, I ended up at 2021, but you see it is now 25.5 efficiencies. These are for the lab scales, by the way, because if you go to the laboratory scale, things will change. Perovskite solar cells seem to be very suitable for this tandem solar cell configuration. So either in 4-terminal, that means you have the perovskite cell and the silicon cell, and you stack them together. This is this 4-terminal, and in 2-terminal, you just coat them on top of each other, and you have these tandem structures. And the efficiencies are improved to 29.2% for these tandem structures together with silicon. About the stability, yes, stability is a very important issue, because although we got high efficiencies, the stability of the device is still a problem to find it on the market. Although we are very ambitious and would like to see it in the market, still there are some problems, but also we know the routes to improve the stability. The most important part is this, already Professor Stathatos mentioned: appropriate metal selection, proper device encapsulation, additive engineering, composition engineering, defect passivation, and improvement in the film quality, energy band tuning. That means I was trying to explain that we are choosing these ABX trees while changing from these parts, which will be the A, which will be the B. This is also very important. And the transport layer selection is important. So we know how to improve, but who will do it? This is a question mark. So many companies already started investing money on the commercialization of the perovskite solar cells. These are the module areas, and these are the company names, and these are the power conversion efficiencies that they have achieved. And most of them are certified as far as I know. So we know that the long-term device stability is a vital property, and various companies have already started. And they also developed world's first full-size production line. Also, Oxford PV was the one. So these perovskite solar cells are important not because they have very high efficiencies, but it's also possible to connect them together with the silicon technology, which dominates the PV market. And this also lets us improve the efficiencies of this silicon technology. These are the contributions to the perovskite solar cell research from our lab. Hamet was my PhD student. He now graduated. And at times he was trying to build up inverted type, this means PIN structure perovskite solar cells. And we exposed to our substrates to the I2 and PSS substrates to the UV radiation. And here, since this is the PIN structure, we don't have the ambition for our perovskite to diffuse to the pores of the system, because this is not a porous system. And here, the hydrophobicity of the surface is important for us. And we have realized that when the surface is hydrophobic, we have larger grains without any kinds of defects here at the surfaces. And because of the UV radiation, we have realized that there is a phase separation between the PDOT and PSS, and either phases can migrate to the surface. And also, the work function of the PDOT PSS is increased. Of course, we have to find an optimum way because we exposed them 0, 5, 10, and 15 minutes. The 0 case was the reference case. And after 15 minutes, the cells were not working properly because most probably the ITO and the PDOT phase was disturbed. Later on, Pınar joined our group as a postdoc, and she was trying to investigate novel interface layers for inverted type, that means PIN type solar cells. But here, she wasn't using PDOT PSS, but she was using nickel oxide as the whole transport layer. And Ceylan was the one, she's still PhD student in chemistry department. Ceylan was the one who synthesized this material together with Sermet Koyuncu and Nevimsan. And we had a novel molecule employed between the I2 and the perovskite layer. And as a result, you see the surface is hydrophilic here, it's hydrophobic here after coating BT layer. And as a result, we improved the efficiency of the PIN type solar cells. As I told you, here the study was, although Pınar is working on nickel oxide based solar cells, this study was based on PDOT PSS, but here this study is based on the nickel oxide as whole transport layer. She doped the nickel oxide with lithium, cobalt, and magnesium. And as a result of this doping, we have realized that the whole conductivity is improved, and also the morphology, the surface became hydrophobic, and we achieved almost 10 to 20% improvement in the efficiency. So later on, she actually doped the nickel oxide layer together with cerium and zinc, and this co-doping also improved. And as I told you, it was really nice to hear from Professor Stathatos that we have to have some kind of ambient conditions, because I'm always telling to my students that if you find a very wonderful result which could take you to the market, I mean, you cannot, the technology does not want these kinds of spatial encapsulation techniques, glow box, and so on. This is difficult to keep that. So we are doing everything outside the glow box, a spatial defabrication. But after evaporation of the electrodes, we are taking it inside the glow box to characterize. So Therefore, we put this ambient air fabrication of this methylammonium lead iodide based perovskite solar cells. And as a result of the doping, we have realized that we have a better band alignment between the perovskite and nickel oxide, and also we have increased the interface quality for pinhole-free growth of the perovskite layer. And these are the results also from the same publication. These are that, and we see these are the efficiencies. The efficiencies improved were improved from 10 to almost 15%. Of course, this is lab scale 1.5 to 1.5 centimeter scale. Later on, so we had an information, we have learned from the previous studies that nickel oxide, when doped, the solar cell performance is improved. And we went back to our old friend of PDOT-PSS in this PIN structure, and we were asking this scientific question that is it possible to apply a kind of doping to the PDOT-PSS, and if the efficiencies improved or not. We were trying to understand that, and as a result of this study by zinc doping of the PDOT-PSS and by heat treatment of the PDOT-PSS layer, so we concluded that the synergetic effect, starting with the improved surface morphology, homogeneous pinhole-free perovskite formation, and increased grain size and increase in work function, actually led to an improvement in the power conversion efficiency. So you see, in the previous talk, we also heard about this shiny, mirror-like perovskite layers, and this is high humidity conditions, and this is ambient lab condition, and these are our perovskites. What about the stability? Yes, stability is an issue, but there was a study like this. It was trying to say that people are expecting 25 years of lifetime, because this was the one which was provided by the silicon solar cell technology. So we have to think about now, do we really need to have, for the new product to go into the PV market, is really 25 years necessary, or can we a little bit decrease it to 10 years? And this study actually gives us an answer on that. Maybe it's possible. And there is also an important issue, is that lead. Lead is an important issue because most of the successful perovskites include lead, and we know that lead is dangerous, it's poisonous, and it's environmentally unfriendly. So what can we do? People are actually, researchers are focusing on replacing this lead with another alternative, but the most important thing is life cycle assessment analysis also shouldn't be ignored for the alternative substitutes of lead. This is very important because most of the ones that have been studied till now, the LCA analysis show that they are also not environmentally friendly. Another study actually focuses on this. So they say that coal industry releases 80,000 metric tons of lead into the atmosphere, and according to their calculations, for the solar cell case, it can be a little bit lower as compared to this one. And on the other hand, we can conclude that this lead is immobilized in the panels, so they are not dispersed to the environment. Of course, by looking at this slide, it is not correct to say that, or I don't mean that we can safely dispose lead to the environment, but the leakage here is very unlikely to occur. And if we can safely somehow encapsulate it, maybe this will be a solution. There is another solution that instead of using the lead from the lead ores, we can use maybe the recycled lead. These are quite new studies, and these are some points that I should mention, which I read from the literature. And these are the perovskite cells from our lab. You see they are at the ambient conditions. We are outside the glow box, and 6 or 7, or maybe 8, I don't know, they are connected in series. And also, we were trying to heat the water. There is a wire here, and we heat this wire using the solar cells. And this is that the temperature is rising. Sorry. These are the solar cells connected together, and this is that you see we could evaporate it. and we could operate the LEDs. And we have also realized that for our solar cells, perovskite solar cells to operate, we don't need the solar simulator, but it can also operate under the ordinary lighting conditions. So I think I'm right on time and a little bit earlier. I can conclude now. It has been shown that the perovskite solar cells can be stable for thousands of hours when evaluated under the conditions to which a real device will be exposed. The environmental effects of LED shouldn't be ignored. Actually, it should be reconsidered. And tandem silicon perovskite solar cells are promising. My slogan was "Let the sun do the work," but today I learned from Zeynep that this is yours. May the light be with you. So I say, let the sun do the work, keep calm and use solar power. Let the sun do the work, and may the light be with you. So we can combine these two. And finally, I would like to acknowledge my PhD supervisor. He's always supporting me, although I am a professor. And there are two Serdars here. My son is also Serdar, and Professor Sarıçiftçi was visiting us in September, so we were together with him. And of course, I would like to thank my students, collaborators, co-workers for their support in these studies, and I presented you the results. And I would like to thank you for your attention.
Thank you. We have time for questions. Do you have any question? Okay, then I have a question. Let's say we have built two solar cells, and one has a face mirror-like, and one has a face pattern that does not reflect light. Which will be better? I don't know that. Do we want mirror-like face or?
No, this was for perovskite, yes, because it is not just by looking at if it is mirror-like or not. It is not good to draw a scientific conclusion. Actually, for the perovskite, we know because we do XRD measurements, we do morphological measurements, SEM, for example, and then we understand that this mirror-like structure is best for the perovskite case. For this methylammonium lead iodide case, because we are working with this material, and in literature, people also are running after these kinds of structures. But of course, for the organic solar cells, we don't need to have these kinds of structures. It depends on which technology you are working with.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.